Hey everybody, it's Evan Easton, and in this video I'm going to be showing you how you can synthesize your own trap drums inside of Serum. Now in this tutorial I'm going to go over a wide variety of sounds, so I'll include timestamps in the video so you can just jump to whatever drum sample you want to make. So without any further ado, let's get into it. Alright, so I'm gonna start off with a kick drum, and kick drums are basically a sine wave that move in pitch from high to low very quickly. So I'm gonna go into my oscillator A here, and I'm gonna go to analog and choose the analog BD sine. This is basically a very basic sine wave. And by the way, I'm gonna be pressing A on my keyboard, playing a middle C note. So I'm gonna lower the octave by 2. And now I'm gonna go into the envelope tab and decrease the sustain and release. And the envelope tab basically allows you to tweak how the sound changes over time. Next, I'm gonna go into my decay and decrease that to about, let's say 200, and I'm gonna increase the hold a little bit so it's touching the ceiling. All right, so the way we're gonna make the sine wave move in pitch is by using the LFO over here. So I'm gonna create a steep downward curve like this. And I'm going to set the mode to envelope. So what this allows it to do is that it will retrigger every time we start a new note. And I'm going to turn off BPM, so the LFO will be synced to hertz instead of tempo. So next, I'm going to grab this LFO 1 and assign it to the coarse pitch. And I'm going to hold Alt or Option if you're on Mac, Shift, and I'm going to click this little blue button over here. So that moves the pitch from high to low rather than it going up and down. I'm going to increase the chorus pitch to about 25. And I'm going to decrease the pitch, the overall pitch, quite a bit. That sounds pretty good to me. You can mess with the rate of the LFO as well. When I slow it down, you can really hear that change in pitch. Okay, so that's sounding pretty good to me. Next, what we can do is add some noise. So I'm gonna enable this noise section over here. And as you can see, Serum comes with a lot of preloaded kick attack sounds. So I suggest you just go through some of these and see which one you like. Now I'm going to enable this one-shot button over here, so we'll play non-looping. And I like kick attack 6. Next, I'm gonna grab this LFO again and assign it to the level parameter of the noise section. And again, I'm gonna hold Alt, Shift, and click on the blue button. And now you just mess with the levels a bit. Okay, so that sounds pretty good to me. Next, I'm going to enable this filter over here, and I'm going to set the cutoff to about 8K. I'm going to increase the variation to 100%. And next, I'm going to pull up this drive. So you can hear that adds some real nice gain and a bit of distortion as well. So the kick is sounding pretty good to me, so now I'm gonna go into the effects tab and add some distortion. And one of my favorite distortions from Serum is the asymmetrical one. and I'm gonna decrease the mix quite a bit. That really makes it a lot more beefy. Okay, so when I'm done in Serum, I actually like to bounce my kicks or any sample down to audio. So in Ableton, I'm just gonna grab an audio track right here. I'm gonna hold Command and press this button so the recording is enabled for this track, for both of them. And then I'm gonna set my input to this track, which is Serum. And now when I hit a key, we can record it in. So let's record a few kicks. All right, I like the first one. Let's go with that. And I'm gonna cut it to right where the transient starts. Give it a bit of a fade. All right, so when it's bounced down to audio, I like to put some additional effects on it. Let's equalize it. I like FabFilter Pro Q3. And I'm gonna give it quite a steep low cut at around 15 Hertz. I find that you don't really need those frequencies for a kick. And maybe give it a bit of a low boost. Before, after. All right, so next I'm gonna put on DS10 Drum Shaper by Excellent Audio. It's a really great plugin. I'm gonna set it to kick and I'm gonna increase the attack a bit. Maybe increase the tightness as well. And afterwards, I like to put on some extra saturation. I like the FabFilter Saturn 2. And I like the clean tube type of saturation. Give it some mild saturation, not that much. And then finally, I like to limit all of my drums. So I like the Pro L2 by FabFilter again. For kicks, the style I like is punchy. Right around there sounds good to me. And then you can also oversample it. I like ×2. All right, so that's our kick. And right now you can export it and do whatever you want with it. All right, so next I'm going to create a snare, and a snare is basically a combination of a sine wave and some noise. So again, I'm going to go into my oscillator A, I'm going to go to analog and choose the analog BD sine. Next, I'm going to go to my LFO1 and I'm going to create a steep downward curve. And again, I'm going to set the mode to envelope and turn off BPM. Next, I'm going to grab my LFO and assign it to the level parameter of oscillator A. And I'm gonna hold Alt and Shift and press this little blue button over here. I'm gonna set the LFO volume to 100 and I'm gonna set the overall level to 50%. So that will give you a small like dot sine wave. So here comes the part where I cheat a little bit. So for the noise, I'm going to enable my noise section over here. I actually like to use very basic bland 808 snare samples. And as you can see here, I've got a small collection of them. And I like to put these samples in my noise section of Serum. So let's choose snare 12, put it in. So now when I play it, it will play that sample. But I'm gonna turn on one-shot mode, so it will only play once. And then I'm gonna assign LFO1 to the level parameter of that noise section as well. Hold Alt or Option Shift and press this blue button again, but then for the noise section. And now just play with the levels to see what you like. By the way, I'll put a link in the description so you can download these samples. And you can play with the rate of the LFO. Alright, so that sounds pretty good. Next, I'm gonna go to my filter over here and grab the high 6 and enable the noise section as well. I'm gonna low cut it a bit. And let's increase the drive. All right, so that sounds pretty good. Now I'm gonna go into my effects tab and I'm gonna add some distortion. Again, I like the asymmetrical distortion for this. And let's add an EQ and give it a bit of a low cut. Decrease the resonance and see where we can cut it. Maybe give it a bit of a high shelf. Not too much. Okay, so that sounds pretty good. Now I'm gonna bounce it down to audio. So scrap this track over here, hold Command, enable record, set the input to Serum. I'm gonna choose the middle one. Make it start exactly right around where the transient begins. Give it a bit of a fade. All right, now I'm gonna put some additional effects on it. So let's first add some EQ. Low cut it. And give it a bit of a boost at around 1500 Hertz. Next, I'm gonna add some saturation. For snares, I really like FabFilter Saturn 2 because this is basically a multi-band saturation plugin and it allows you to hone in on specific frequency areas. And let's increase the drive for that specific area and change the style to clean tube. So as you can hear, that really adds that trap sound to it. I also like to put on the DS10 drum shaper, but I'm gonna put this before the FabFilter Saturn. Set it to snare mode and increase the attack. Maybe increase the body a bit. Sounds pretty good. And finally, I'm gonna put a limiter on it, Pro L2. I'm gonna set the style to all round and just increase the gain to about there. Sounds fine to me. And then I'm gonna oversample it by 4 times. All right, so that's our snare. Now you can export it and do whatever you want with it. All right, now I'm gonna show you how to make a clap. Now, a clap only consists of white noise. So I'm gonna turn off oscillator A, And I'm gonna turn on the noise parameter over here, and I'm gonna choose ARB white. Now, most of the sound of a clap is made with the LFO, so I'm gonna create a pretty specific shape here. So I'm gonna create 2 steep downward slopes, and then the last one I'm gonna make a bit broader, and then slope it down like this. Next, I'm gonna assign LFO to the noise level. I'm gonna turn off one-shot mode. And then I'm gonna turn on envelope mode and turn off BPM. And I forgot, we need to hold Alt and Shift and click on this little blue button here. So it will really be a one shot. I'm gonna set this to 50%. And I'm gonna set my rate to about there. So the real trap clap sound is actually gonna come from the filter. So I'm gonna enable the filter, turn off oscillator A, and turn on the noise section. And then I'm gonna go into normal and choose the band 12. Then I'm gonna adjust the cutoff. Increase the resonance. Turn up the variation all the way. And then turn up the drive. And maybe make it a bit faster. All right, sounds pretty good to me. Now I'm gonna go into the effects tab, turn on distortion, and again, like always, choose the asymmetrical distortion. Next, I'm gonna put on an EQ, set it to low cut, and about there, sounds good. And I'm gonna give it a high shelf as well. Not too much. Okay, so now I'm done in Serum, and I'm gonna bounce it down to audio. So hold Command, enable record, set the input to Serum, and now let's record a few claps. I'm gonna choose the middle one. And fade it out. So for additional effects, I'm gonna put on an equalizer, Fab Filter Pro Q3, and just high pass it again. Maybe give it a bit of a boost at around 1500. Okay, so next I'm gonna put on some saturation. Again, Fab Filter Saturn 2, really great for one shots. And I'm gonna set the mode to clean tube. Let's focus on a specific area. Let's increase the drive for that area. Okay, so now I'm actually gonna low cut it again because FabFilter Saturn adds a bit of low harmonics. Maybe again boost the highs just a tiny bit. Okay, and finally I'm gonna put a limiter on it. FabFilter Pro L2. That's a bit too much. Don't want to limit it too much. I think claps don't have to be limited that much. I like the all round. And then oversample it by 4. All right, so that's our clap, and now you can export it. All right, so the next thing we're gonna make is gonna be the 808. Now, that's a very important one, and it's basically just a sine wave pitched a few octaves lower. So we're gonna go into oscillator A, and we're gonna go into analog and choose analog BD sine. And I'm gonna lower this one by 3 octaves. And next I'm gonna go into the envelope tab over here, and I'm gonna increase the attack. And I'm gonna increase the release quite a bit. Next I'm gonna go to my LFO section over here, and I'm gonna create a steep downward curve, set the mode to envelope, and turn off BPM. Then I'm gonna grab my LFO and assign it to the coarse pitch of oscillator A. Then I'm gonna hold Alt or Option if you're on Mac, Shift, and click on this little blue button over here. So that really creates that bounce in pitch. And you can play with the rate. If I slow it down, you can really hear that movement in pitch. I think I like it about there. So afterwards, I'm gonna turn on my filter. I'm gonna set the cutoff to about 5K. I'm gonna increase the variation and then play with the drive. I'm also gonna set the voicing to mono, so your notes are not gonna overlap. Next, I'm gonna go to the effects tab, and I'm gonna put on some distortion. Like with every other one shot, I like the asymmetrical distortion. Really adds some nice beefiness to it. And then lastly, I'm gonna put on an equalizer and just increase the low end ever so slightly. So that sounds pretty good to me, and now I'm ready to bounce it on to audio. I'm gonna set the input to Serum, and then I'm gonna hold Command and enable record for this track, and then we can record it in. Let's cut it to right around where the transient starts. Give it a bit of a fade in. So for additional effects, I like to put on another saturator. For 808s, I really like Decapitator by Soundtoys, and especially this beefy preset. Now makes it a bit more dirty. All right, and just to go all out, I'm gonna put on Ableton Saturator as well, just a tiny bit. So that really sounds very beefy and full. And I like to top it off with a limiter, so we can really push it to the max. You can get away with quite a bit of gain reduction. All right, I'm gonna keep the style to modern. and oversample it by 4 times. So that's our 808. Now you can export it and put it in your sample pack. Alright, so now we're gonna make a hi-hat, and hi-hats are probably the most easy thing to make. They're basically just filtered out white noise. So we're gonna turn off oscillator A, and I'm gonna just turn on the noise section over here. And I'm gonna go into analog and choose ARP white. Okay, so now I'm gonna go into my LFO1 and create a steep downward curve. Set the mode to envelope, turn off BPM, and assign the LFO to the level parameter of the noise section. Okay, so next I'm gonna hold Alt and Shift and press this little blue button over here. And I'm gonna set this LFO level to 100 and then set the overall noise level to 50%. And then you can kind of mess with the rate if you want to. Okay, that sounds good to me. So now I'm gonna turn on my filter. I'm gonna go into normal and choose band 12. And I'm gonna turn off oscillator A and assign the noise oscillator to it. So I'm gonna mess with the cutoff, increase the resonance, increase the variation, and then mess with the drive. And I'm actually gonna up the attack a bit. Okay, that sounds pretty good. So now I'm gonna go into my effects tab. I'm gonna put on just a small amount of distortion. And then you can put on a phaser, tiny bit, to get some stereo imaging. And then I'm gonna put a low cut EQ on it. Right about there. Okay, so now let's record that to audio. So I'm gonna hold Command Enable Record for this track and set the input to Serum. I'm gonna choose the first one. So for additional processing, I like to put on another EQ. Just another low cut. And then I actually like this plugin called Wider. Yeah, over here. It does what it says, it makes it wider, but I like to use it in parallel. So I'm gonna select this, press Command plus G, and that makes a group of it. And then I'm gonna right click, create chain, and this is gonna be our dry signal. And this is gonna be wider. And then you can kind of use this as a mix knob, dialed in the way you want it. And then lastly, I'm gonna limit this with FabFilter Pro L2. But not that much. All around. All right, so that's our hi-hat. Now you can export it. Right, so now I'm gonna show you how to create an open hat. Now these are very similar to just closed hi-hats. They're mainly different in timing and shape. So I'm gonna turn off oscillator A and I'm gonna turn on the noise section over here. And I'm gonna choose ARP pink noise. Next, I'm gonna increase the attack just a bit and then go to the LFO section over here and create this kind of shape. So a little bit broader here, and then create a downward curve. Next, I'm going to set the mode to envelope and turn off BPM. And I'm going to assign the LFO1 to the level parameter of the noise section. Next, I'm going to hold Alt and Shift and click on the little blue button over here. So we'll play only once. And then I'm going to set the overall level to 50% and set the LFO level to 100. And then you can play with the rate. So right now it sounds pretty harsh, so I'm going to put on a filter. And I'm going to turn off oscillator A and assign the noise filter to it. Then I'm going to choose band 12. Increase the resonance and play with the cutoff. So I like it about over there. Then I'm going to go to my effects and let's put a flanger on it. You can go pretty wild with the effects on open hats. I'm also going to put a phaser on it to really give it that stereo depth. And while we're at it, I'm going to put a chorus on it as well. And lastly, I'm going to put an EQ on it and give it a high pass. So I'm pretty happy with the sound. So now I'm going to record it into audio. So let's set the input to Serum, hold Command and enable record. Let's record an open hat. Cut it to about there. And I'm going to give it a good fade in. Then fade it out. So for additional effects, I like to put on another EQ just to really get rid of those low ends. About there. Sounds good to me. Then I also like to put on wider by polyverse, much like the closed hi-hat. And I'm going to put it in parallel. So let's create a dry chain, name this one dry, and name this one wider. And then you can use this as a mix knob. I'm actually going to low cut it again. I think we're done. So that's your open hat, and now you can export it. All right, so lastly, I'll show you how you can create your own crash sounds in Serum. So that's a combination of oscillator A and the noise section. So for oscillator A, again, I'm just going to choose analog BD sine. And for the noise, I'm going to pick ARP white. Next, I'm going to go to the LFO section and create a downward curve. Set the mode to envelope and turn off BPM and assign the LFO to both the level parameter of the noise section and the level parameter of the oscillator A. Next, I'm going to hold Alt and Shift and push both of these blue buttons and set both of the overall levels to 50% and put the LFO level to the maximum for both. So now I'm going to slow down the rate for the LFO. And I'm going to increase the attack on the envelope. So now I'm going to set the unison for oscillator A to 16. That creates a very wide stereo depth. I'm going to turn the blend mode all the way down. And I'm going to go over here and I'm going to choose FM noise oscillator and turn that all the way up. All right. So to give it more of that crash sound, I'm going to turn on the filter and assign both oscillator A and the noise section to it. Just the cutoff, and then assign the LFO to the cutoff of the filter. But we're actually going to invert it. So just grab this and pull it down. So it's going up. All right, so I like how that sounds. So let's put some effects on it. For crashes, I actually like to go pretty wild with effects too. So I'll put on a flanger. Maybe a phaser. And I'll top it off with a high pass EQ. Maybe a bit of a high shelf. All right, so let's record that. I'm gonna set my input to Serum, hold Command. Let's record it in. Gonna give it a bit of a fade in. Cut it to about there. So next I'm gonna put on another equalizer just to get rid of some additional low information. Next I'm gonna put on Wider by Polyverse. And just like the hi-hats, I'm gonna put this in parallel. So Command plus G, and then right click, create chain. This is gonna be our dry. This is gonna be wider. And then just play with the mix knob. About there is fine. And lastly, I'm just gonna put on some reverb to smooth it out. All right, so that's going to be our crash. Thanks for watching this video. I hope it was somewhat valuable to you and you picked up a few things here and there. So yeah, I'll see you in the next one and maybe consider subscribing.